Welcome to the show. Hi, I'm Randy Jeffers, and we are live from the entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. Well, we have a really special guest today. We have David Richard from Huntington Beach, California, who is just an amazing, interesting guy, and so you're going to learn a lot this hour. But David, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me here today, Randy.
Absolutely.
My pleasure.
Great to have you here, and we have had kind of a fascinating last couple of hours. We've been hanging out with a world-class scientist and talking about health and all kinds of cool things. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm going on 65 years young, and learning is one of my favorite things, and being with fascinating people such as Dr. Michael earlier, you, and finding out the synergy of all the people we know throughout our lives and in different areas, and maximizing it so we make a better place for other people, particularly in the holistic health field, personalized regenerative medicine, stem cells, and things of that nature.
Well, very good. And you know, you are kind of I introduced you as an amazing guy, and I think a lot of that is because you surround yourself with amazing people, and you sort of network people together and introduce them to each other, and the end result is that you have this just amazing group around you that's just got to keep you excited all the time, huh?
It does. I truly am blessed. And once again, learning is one of my favorite things, and what we can do with it, how we can make things better. One of my favorite words is effective, how we can be more effective, kinder, gentler, loving, and utilizing the best resources from everybody. I believe that God put us here to use each other. Now that's a word that gets thrown around. Not abuse, but use lovingly and kindly, where there's fair trades, where we're transparent and we give and take from each other to maximize and be more synergistic.
Well, you know, one of the things about you that I've noticed is that you really are a very kind person and very sensitive to others, to the needs of other people, and that's a rare thing. You know, very few people are just, they live their life. You know, very few people live in a life of kindness, and so I think that's a pretty cool thing to know somebody like you that lives that way, actually walks the talk. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. That was also felt by my sweetheart on you as well. And from tiny little acorns, mighty oaks can grow. You never know where you're going to be the next day. And I wasn't always, I'm not saying I'm a great person, but I always wasn't as good or a kind of a person. I just didn't learn those skills early on. And patience is one of my things I had to learn. We all have to learn in this world. Being kind and forgiving, because everybody's fighting their own private battle, and nobody comes out of a blender where you add water and they're instant wonderful, or they're instant, excuse my language, a-hole. A lot of work was put into people, and we have to go in steps with people to unite with them. So,
yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to ask you some questions about that, but let's start first. Let's just talk about you. Where'd you grow up? What part of the country were you in?
Thank you for asking me. I grew up originally in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Nice Midwestern town.
Cold one in Milwaukee.
Yeah. Oh. Yes, it can be. And I've lived more time now in California than I have in the suburbs, Brookfield, Elm Grove, Waukesha County, Wisconsin. Lived on and off a few times in Dallas, Texas, with some very powerful, interesting people, and a very short time in New York City. But Orange County has been my domicile over the past 35 years.
It's a great place to have as a domicile. You're living in heaven every day.
Well,
great place.
It's if I can, it's good news and bad news. It is great, but the amount of population coming in by construction, businesses, and the traffic, we no longer have rush hour, we have rush life. And the amount that has been put on the books over the next 3 years that has been permitted is supposed to be 150,000 increase of people.
Goodness.
So I think there's a ticking time bomb there, particularly when zoning changed its density.
Yeah.
So we were talking globally today with the person that dropped us off. We were talking Panama and other areas, and I love this country, but sometimes we may have to think globally.
It's not a bad idea.
Yes.
You're absolutely right. I guess I was saying that because when I go to your part of the country, I try to stay on the beach. And,
Yes.
And it's a little different life there.
It is. And thank you for coming and meeting us on the beach in Huntington Beach. And that's a great place to get away, but still we have to move in traffic in there. But I want to talk all about positive things. So
Absolutely. So you grew up in Wisconsin,
Yes.
a real cold area, and that's
Yeah.
where you went through school. And
actually, I went to high school there. I only did 1 year of college. And one of the things on my resume of my high points, for those that get it, and everybody leads a different life, is that I didn't graduate from university or college, but I've excelled in all other areas of academia or in corporations and so forth. For instance, when Smith Barney hired me to be a stockbroker and to acquire a Series 7 in '63, I was the only fellow there that did not have a college education for that era, had never bought securities, nor had ready customers to go. They took a chance on me. So.
amazing, yeah. Well, we're both surrounded with a lot of the same people at very high levels of many different areas in life, and especially some of the scientists that we know in common, and I've been with you enough now to listen to you talk, and I guess that's sort of a question now that a lot of young people are going through. Do I want to go to college? Or is there another way? And a lot of people are choosing other ways, right?
They are, for many reasons.
Yeah.
Economics. When they changed the bankruptcy laws, you couldn't bankrupt student loans. This is a pretty deep subject. Military housing, prison housing, and university housing, and they all have their very interesting methods of why they're growing. But we got to get back to basic things. If the blank ever really does hit the fan, it's going to be a multi-dynamic person that not only can work with their head, their brain, but their hands, the basic fundamentals of fixing, repairing, and things of that nature. And what we're doing to the young people, it's hard for me to say that. I always think of myself as a young person, but we're putting them in some very interesting times with artificial intelligence, computers, robotics, etc., etc. There's a shift going because all the metrics are breaking. Social Security and so forth is now down to 2.7 supporting 1. When that pyramid used to be this way, very few at the top. So a lot of changes before us, Randy.
Yeah, big time changes. Now, I know you're heavily involved in the health and wellness field.
Correct.
What do you see going on there? That's a really interesting field right now.
Well, there's battles going on. Most of the time, there's battles of words where I don't think the better words are being used. For instance, most people aren't experiencing health care or care about health care funding. They're looking at sickness funding,
Right.
where both I, you, and the group that we represent are truly looking at freedom from health care funding and true holistic, conscious, and spiritual, the complete dynamic of becoming healthier, vital, and more vibrant. So we're at loggerheads where a system can't continue to go the way it is.
But yet at the same time, we're seeing all these tremendous strides in medicine that's just changing the dynamic. And there really is a war going on that the end result is that we probably can't even imagine what 10 years from now is going to look like in that field. I mean, it's changing so rapidly, isn't it?
It totally is. Economics, individual freedoms. I mean, the big issue right now is vaccines, for instance,
Yeah.
and whether you have free choice in that area or not. And
Big measles outbreak now.
yeah, but the question really isn't, is that good or bad? In the early days, people were brought to people who had measles so their immune systems would be enhanced. So As Alex Jones would say, InfoWars, there's a war on for your mind. And the best thing we can do, other than being kind and forgiving and loving to other people, because I try not to have abrasive arguments anymore. I try to ask good questions, but there really is dogmas and propagandas pushing us into different areas because corporations, in my opinion, have gotten out of hand. If we don't go to the fundamentals in this country and restore corporations back to a lesser level, back what Lincoln was talking about in the early 1860s, and we don't eliminate this type of lobbying that we have, where everything is for sale, including our representatives, we're not going to get back to what this country needs to get back to. So this isn't talked about much in mainstream news or other areas.
So what do you see in the future? What do you think in your wildest imagination that it's going to look like in 10 years or so?
Wow. What is your listening audience like? Because the answer to that question is mixed, and it's kind of from A Few Good Men when he's asked, "You want the truth? Can you handle the truth?"
Handle it, yeah.
I pray every day for miracles. I pray that good people like yourself and other people that I know with you, that we can make a difference. But I don't know if we're going to go through a great flood, metaphorically or not, or cleansing, because a lot of changes have to be made for us to take care of this earth right, to be good stewards. I mean, there's things that get buried under the rug, one right after the other. I think of Fukushima with their nuclear reactor spewing. I think about the reactor in Orange County, or close to it, San Onofre. I think about in Las Vegas, you had the shooting. I was here last year, 60, and then we have Christchurch, and then we have the other. It's like one thing after the other, and it wasn't too long ago I was in Poway, close to where that temple was. So it's like this. It can go either way, and it's not that people just have to wake up and know. They have to be empowered on what some of the solutions and directions are. But people certainly are asking a lot of questions these days. I don't think all of them are buying the same standard line.
So what's the answer for the average person out there?
Watch much less TV.
Yep.
Hug a lot of your neighbors. Ask for forgiveness. Be kind, because the person you may be assaulting today may be the person, and I say that metaphorically, may be the person saving you tomorrow. Yeah. And we really do have to have a fellowship and a brotherhood of our neighbors and friends, and stay off your phone less, and recognize the person sitting next to you. Look into their eyes, be kind to them, and connect with them. And each one, reach one to teach one.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So you say hugging your neighbor.
Yeah.
The world's changed a lot in our lifetime, certainly.
Yes.
And I remember people in my life back early on that practiced hugging. Now, of course, we have people like Joe Biden, who's running for president, that getting himself, and I have no idea what his motivation is or was, but he's getting in some trouble for hugging people. And how do you sort of balance that out?
Well, maybe he is and maybe he isn't. We're certainly being told he is, but what we're being told oftentimes is to jockey the minds of people for who the next contender is, if you will. I think if you have doubts about things, you smile and you ask somebody nicely, "May I give you a hug?" Or "Bring it over here, brother," or, whatever. Check in. We need to get back to basics in life of critical, independent thinking, and really watching the body language of another person and asking permission. Would it be okay? Transitional words and phrases.
I love that. That's the answer, isn't it? It's the transitional phrases. It's how you say it.
That is right.
It's really important. Yeah. Oh, That's great insight.
Thank you.
So let me ask you this: what out of all the people that you've met in your life, which has been many, who do you think has impressed you the most, and who do you think has influenced you the most?
Well, so many. The most, I'd have to name maybe a top 3 or 5 that instantly comes to my mind.
Okay.
I was blessed, and I'm eclectic. I'm all over the map. I was blessed to meet and converse with Ralph Nader. I can remember being at Chapman College, neither being a Democrat or Republican. That's the last time I really was rah, being proud to be an American. And there's much to be proud of being American. But he gave so much hope, and he was kind of the people. Ron Paul has impressed me. I've spoken with him on the phone. And yet there's a gentleman that comes to mind, Father Charlie Moore, who was an ordained father of the Catholic Church, while yet being a lawyer and the youngest DA in California history, age 28 or 29, of Santa Cruz. Wow. And he was also Melvin Belli's office manager, Melvin Belli, the father of American tort law and so forth. Yeah. So just to sit in the presence of these people and listen to what they have to say and learn, and there's so many other great ones that I'm sure I could speak about. The pastor of a church we go to, Bayless Conley, and his life from drugs, alcohol, and chasing to what he's done in his community, and the maturity, and just so many great mentors that touch my heart.
And of course you're now paying that forward, and
yes,
with other people, and you've become the mentor, huh?
I hope so. We not only need to pay it back, we need to pay it forward, and we need to pay it sideways. Yep. I've said to certain people, please forgive me how I've thought of you in the past. And they go, what do you mean? You've never been anything but nice. I said, but I didn't have the best thoughts. And maybe I thought you were weak because you were so kind and so gentle. I hadn't matured to that level that really meant somebody was excellent. And it does my heart good to ask for the forgiveness of those people, because I always want to be open to the best in other people, and not see things like a political show on a lot of mainstream TV. A couple of my favorite phrases these days are reciting what Paul Harvey, the great broadcaster, said, and the rest of the story. And another one of my phrases, Randy, is this: where does the devil reside? Because I used to say, where is the devil? And people would say, what? I go in the details. They said, no, that's where God is. I said, you're right. The devil resides where the details are missing.
That's interesting perspective. Yes. Very interesting. Yeah. So, all of this knowledge that you've now learned, if you were to sort of encapsulate it, and what does it sort of all boil down to? Sort of the essence of living a good life, maybe.
Well, to use knowledge, which can be power, my people shall perish for they lack knowledge, is just asking for more forgiveness and kindness. I know this may sound biblical, but it's kind of universal. And what you learn, make it work and helpful other people, so you create a synergy and a tipping point. I reminded a friend of mine who just got together with me after 15 years of separation, if you will, that watching the Democrats attack the Republicans or Republicans attack the Democrats, it's not a football game. Not everything is who is the winner and the loser. That simple. We all win when we're together, or we all lose to a certain degree, because at the end of the day, who we are is a vibrational imprint. Our vibration carries out to other people. So you put prisoners behind a wall, you can't stop that vibration going into the ether. You farm animals improperly, you can't stop that negative vibration. So to quote Brian, of the Beach Boys, Brian Wilson. We want to have good vibrations, and that actually is felt out of the heart through heart rate variability. And people start to hear you metaphorically even before words come out of your mouth. How your eyes look, how your pupils are, early primitive man, and what are you broadcasting from your heart. And these good vibrations are contagious, and that's what we need to do.
Well, you and I are surrounded by a number of people that are leaders in the anti-aging field.
Yes.
And there's tremendous strides there, and that, people are talking about us living many years longer than the current life expectancy. But at some point, we all go. And when that happens for you, what would you like on your tombstone?
David Richard, he was a thinker, he cared, and he spoke up when he should have.
Very good. And so how do you speak up? Give us a couple of examples of your speaking up.
Well, oftentimes you've got to speak up for other people. They're shy.
Yeah.
They're very good people. They're smart. They just don't want to be abrasive or offend anybody. Well, you're going to offend some people some of the times, but if you can speak with gentle words, kind words, and let somebody know what your intentions are, and oftentimes by asking good questions like you are right now, that's a great way to have people, to get them to think, not to just jump in their face and say, or I disagree with you, wrong. Well, how do you feel about this and about that? Your choice of questions, from open probes to closed probes, really can gently lead a conversation. And I wasn't this way all the time. It's just the better way for me, at least for me to be. So
since you weren't always the way you are now,
yes.
How did you get to be? What caused that? Was there something sudden that changed everything, or was it a process?
Yeah, it's a process. Yeah. Constantly evaluating, thinking here, but also thinking here with your gut, because science is showing that. We're talking about health. Our gut flora dictate things, and thinking here with the heart. And what kind of long-term effects do we have with people, and trying to get out the selfish mode. As wonderful as a place that I grew up in, it seemed that human nature was, when we feel pain, the first thing we wanted to do, or we've been told to do, is get that pain out of us by blaming somebody else. And that isn't where the answer is. The answer starts with changing us. We've heard all these things through the years, but you have to live it. And you have to care about how you affect other people. Go to nursing homes, go to old folks' homes, and say to yourself, I'm going to be one of these people one of these days. How am I want to be treated? So I look at senior people, which I'm considered 65, and I look at very young children and babies these days, and as well as young puppies or happy dogs, and saying, can we all be happy dogs or young puppies, particularly for the future of this world, the young children, as well as the kindness and extending fellowship to old people, because we're all in it together. We can shut our door, but you can't shut the energy. You can't shut the spirit. It is there. So be a part of it, do something kind and wonderful with it, or it's going to eat you up somewhere, sometime, someplace.
But it's not easy, is it?
It's not easy at all.
It's a habit that takes some working at.
I was very blessed to have Tony Anthony Robbins' hand on my shoulder. We talk about great people we've been blessed with. Another influential person in my life, as we're thinking right now, where I'm speaking out loud. And he said the number one motivator of the human condition, of the typical person, is the immediate acquisition of pleasure, or the delayed acquisition of pleasure, and the immediate avoidance of pain, or the delayed avoidance of pain. We may go to work at something we don't like, but that paycheck at the end of the week is what we value more than the pain of that. And the deal is, what I've learned is, that if you cheat, always trying to have immediate pleasure, you're going to have long-term pain. And I also learned that when we try to get pleasure right away, and Tony talked about this too, Tony Robbins, we can fall into a middle of a chasm. Here's pain, here's pleasure, and we get the right type of pain, and that pain is called adversity. And when we can overcome adversity, meaning there's something we can feel as pain, but we can overcome it and become in homeostasis or balanced again, that's oftentimes when we seem to grow the most. There's a lesson. Like if you and I were going to work out and pump weights, if it's too little and we don't sweat, nothing's going to come of it. It's way too much, we could damage ourselves, break a bone or a muscle. When we can find balance, if I were to impart any words of wisdom, the key to success, and what success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal found with spiritual, conscious, holistic balance. If we are not balanced, we are nothing. We may look great on TV, we may look great on this program, we may be a superstar, but superstars that aren't balanced, it's over with. We've got to have the health, physical, mental, spiritual, and environmental. And I pray for everybody out there that they find that balance, because that's where really happiness and good spiritual intelligence is found.
So finding that balance, though, is the tricky part.
It is.
And let's say that we had you go one-on-one with maybe an 18-year-old. What advice? Because that's an age when you're sort of struggling. You're trying to figure out. You're either going to do what you've been programmed by your parents to do, which in many cases is going to college, and at some point you're going to rebel, or you've rebelled earlier, or maybe you're just confused and you're searching. But most people go through all of those things. And what advice would you have for someone who's in that situation?
Well, if I was talking with somebody and they were 18 years old sitting where you are, and we had to have a conversation, I'd ask them, what are you doing? What's going on? What spins your propeller? I'd want to find out about that. And then I might ask them, how do you feel about the city you live in, or the country, or the world? What are your thoughts? And I would listen. And I'd ask them questions, how does that make you feel? And probably somewhere along the way, I'd also apologize to them. Ask me why.
Why?
Because I was a steward before they were. If they're 18 and I'm going to be 65, they're 1/3 as young as me at least, I could have done a better job, just like my parents could have done a better job of taking care of this world. Because I think 18-year-olds are in a very challenged position. I admire what they're able to go through, and my selfishness tells me that I had a better time. Things were simpler. They weren't moving as fast. The rate of knowledge to keep up, to handle your text, your emails, or whatever you choose, is a big demand and oftentimes burden to place on people. And I'd ask for forgiveness that I didn't do a better job, or maybe that my parents didn't do a better job.
You talked about adversity and how important that is, and that's where maybe some real growth really happens, right? It's an interesting climate that we're in right now in this country. We have a political situation that's very different from anything that I've seen in my lifetime. And so it's sort of hard to know what's going to happen, but I know there are cycles in life, and it may come back around and sort of cycle back to how it has been in the past. But we have right now this mentality, of course it's a presidential election time again, and so we have people out there talking about giving away a lot of free things. And what are your thoughts on what's going on in the United States right now?
Great question. Well, I believe his story is slanted. The real work is when you dig up fact story. And history has repeated itself. There is jockeying for control. But a lot of it's been out there for a long time. The question is, why are we noticing it now? And the answer is because the fat is no longer on the bone. There are less meaningful jobs, there's more automation, artificial intelligence. People, if you will, are being stressed. But we have been warned, and the writing has been out there in the past many years ago. I like to go back to Dwight D. Eisenhower. Happened to be a Republican, happened to be a general, and a president. And he warned this country of the military-industrial complex. Actually, the original speech was written as the Congressional Military-Industrial Complex. When he left office and he gave that 14-minute speech, he wasn't doing anything else except playing golf, and he did commune sometimes with John F. Kennedy on the Cuban Missile Crisis. But it's almost as if he passed the gauntlet off to Kennedy, who was a Democrat, when there wasn't that much difference between Democrat and Republican.
Right.
So,
yeah, President Kennedy probably would be considered a Republican now.
Probably
now.
And I think people really need to go back and do critical thinking of what reality is. The schools don't always tell you the truth. Your parents don't always tell you the truth. And the truth is a really tough thing to find out. It's a lot of work. And just don't take things for granted. Peer deep. It is work that is worthy work to dig deep. And not just take things for granted. We have searches of truth or fact checkers. But the other thing is, the next president isn't going to be the Messiah to the United States either way. There's fundamental issues that are way deeper than that. And go throughout history and look at basic things, the Federal Reserve, where power came from, how this country came to be. And a lot of things, in my opinion, and a lot of work that I did in this area, just aren't as we're being told daily. Because we're not just being told, we're being sold. There's an agenda. And to find the heart, the gentleness, and the wisdom of what people want. We're jockeying for power, not only in the United States, but Randy, as you well know, they're jockeying for power in the world. Because when a Great Depression hit back then, China wasn't breathing down our back at that time. Not that China is a bad place per se, or Russia wasn't, but the whole world is evolving and people are jockeying for position, and a lot of times it's power that is not being used appropriately.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. You know, it's sort of hard to imagine what our political future is going to be. Things can change just so fast. Very few societies have really made it past 200 years, and here we are at that point, past that point, and it'll be very interesting. You mentioned truth a while ago, and at the most basic level, how would you define truth?
Well, they say science is supposed to be truth. Unfortunately, politically, most of it isn't. It is political driven. Truth in science is something that can be replicated over and over with facts, but facts are even blurred. This gets to be a really deep subject in which you've got to pay attention to people, you've got to be a good listener, and a lot of it is not even learned in a book. Or books.
You know, it's interesting you say that. There's a new phrase out now, especially in politics. It's your version of the facts.
That's right.
So facts may not be facts always.
Well, that is true. One of the things I would suggest good people do is to look at the etymology of words. Also, there was a great movie. It was Starbucks' first production. It's called Aquila and the Bee. Lawrence Fishburne played in it, Angela Bassett and Keke Palmer. And I'm going to be a spoiler here, but she learned to be the spelling bee champion, not by memorizing, by understanding the history and etymology of words and what they mean and where they come from. And one of the ways we're messed with is words. A typical word can have 3 to 7 different definitions depending, and the etymology of where it comes from in history, whether it be Latin or Greek. People need to learn the history of words because they will mess with us in phraseologies, colloquialisms, or words. It's very important to know the genesis of words and to stick with, or in a conversation like you and I are having, define in the beginning, what do we mean by this word? Often in my conversations with people, I'll say, what do you mean by that? Or what is your definition, or how do you feel? And you find out that we're not that far apart. They just look at a certain word a certain way. That happens with my sweetheart and I. I go, okay, so this is what you mean. Or she'll say to me, oh, that's what you mean. Then we come back together again. People need to be not so trigger happy, and they really need to ask themselves, what is the ultimate goal in everything? And wise people have said to me, David, do you want to be right, or do you want to be happy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned your sweetheart, and
Yes.
you are truly blessed to have her in your life. And
I am.
What a wonderful lady she is.
Cheryl? Yes.
Do you want to say a couple nice things about her?
Oh, I don't know if I can only say a couple. After the big guy, Cheryl's probably my second biggest savior, where she's provided me with a lot of grace. The definition of that word is getting more than you probably were entitled to on the physical plane. Would you agree with that word?
I like it, yeah.
Salvation, saving my character, my soul, my being, allowing me to see things through a different set of eyes so I can be better. Redemption, redeeming me, so I'm a better person to better people and seeing a different point of view. Her kindness, her generosity, the fact that sometimes there's friction, two pieces of steel make each other sharper. And me also practicing, she's a firstborn like I'm a firstborn, extremely intelligent, extremely accomplished, extremely diverse. But if I can always remember Ruiz's words, and he may not be the originator, do your best, honor your word, don't take it personal, and don't take assumptions. Each day I build, hopefully, my character and my poise to remember what the most important thing is. And we're never going to find anybody 100%, 90, maybe not even 80, but look at if you're going way above 50, 55, 60, 70, this is the good old days. This is the best there is in this moment. And making somebody your best friend as well as your playmate. And I just thank her for coming into my life.
Absolutely.
Met her at a health place of all places.
Did you really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, that's probably a good omen there.
Yes.
So, as you know, there are probably a lot of people listening to us, or just most people in general, I think, are not happy in their various relationships, and for a lot of reasons. But there is a way to sort of move in that direction and maybe even accomplish some of those things. What advice would you have for some of those people who are listening to us right now?
You get out of life or these things what you put in. Men seem to know so much about football games. They seem to know so much about their cars. I said, have you ever studied the manual on your body? And they'll go, what? There's a manual? I go, well, metaphorically, yes, not actually no, but if you don't even begin to look for it and search for the truth, put as much time and effort in the important things, learning about the psychology of men and women, relationships, the important things, the amount of time people watch TV, and I'm not putting anybody down, but we don't watch TV. I'm here visiting. The TV might be on in the hotel room. That's the exception. Or if we go out to eat. But there is no TV on at the house. Not saying all TV is bad, but don't let the digital machine take you over. Learn to be a free thinker. Have discussions, community group meetings. These are some of the most rewarding things. Find a mentor. These are the important things. What was the question again?
No, that's great advice.
Okay.
You know, the things that we surround ourselves with are so addictive. You know, especially media things. You know, the phone that we carry in our pockets, the TV, as you mentioned. You know, the new generation. I have a 9-year-old, and he doesn't watch TV. He watches the screen, but he watches YouTube videos, shorter kind of versions of the long movies that we used to watch. But they're so addictive.
Right.
You know, it's very difficult to pry yourself away from those things. I think a lot of people, they know every day what shows they're going to watch that night.
That's right.
Right?
Do they know how they're going to love their wife? Do they know how they're going to be kind to their neighbor? If you're going to watch a show, watch something on that. We live in such a stress-filled world that people are on autopilot to release of stress, and I get that. I understand that. But we have to be mindful. You will become your environment, period. Ask yourself what your 3 or 4 basic goals are, and ask yourself how you want to get to that environment. And I understand sometimes you need to be an idle. Sometimes just quiet space, being out in the country, in the woods, by the ocean. Find those moments. Living in Southern California, it was amazing how many years it took me before I was out into the backcountry and, there's a lake out here, or there's this. It changes us. So,
you know, there's an old saying, you are the books you read and the people you hang around with. And of course, books now is probably expanded to YouTube videos you watch, or but the media you're around and the people you're around. In terms of books, what are the top 3 books that you'd recommend to people watching us right now?
Oh, gosh. Well, once again, Anthony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant. However, the truth be told, I think he comes across better verbally. He's got such a great voice. There's so many. Think and Grow Rich. Odd Mandino's book, The Greatest Salesman, in his compendium. I would certainly say people should look at religious materials. They should dabble, or more than dabble, looking at the Bible or the Torah or ancient readings and stuff. There are a lot of mysteries to unlock there that cause you to go, wow. One thing I don't do, and I'm not putting anybody else down who does, I do no social media. There are corporations, Facebook, Google, and their derivatives, YouTube, and different things where they direct our mind flow. Make sure you find independent thinking if you can, loving thinking, kind thinking. And as I mentioned recently again, people get into a politic, Democrat versus Republican, like they're rooting for a football game, and they get sucked into even great intellectual shows. Mark Levin or whoever side you want to take, CNN, but there's corporations behind these things. If you take a look at CNN, it's owned by Turner Broadcasting, which is owned by Time Warner, which is now in the last year owned by AT&T, at one time the largest corporation on the planet Earth. There are a lot of agendas and hidden agendas, and make sure you don't become part of somebody else's hidden agenda. Follow money trails, follow corporate trails, and along the way keep a kind attitude. Being angry to a level of disgust is not going to help you. Being angry a little to motivated to do good things is okay.
You know, there's another old saying that goes something like, you need to have your own plan or your own direction, your own path, or you're going to be part of someone else's, right?
Right.
And some of it starts there, doesn't it? Having a time of introspection and figuring out what it is you want to do with the rest of your life.
Well, yes, absolutely. And you were certainly a rule breaker in that area, where people tell you you have limits, or this can't work this way, or that can't work that way. And you were highly accomplished, in which the people were catalyzed by you in a time when there wasn't social media. And you were doing so many good things for so many people and liberating them in the phone card business that your company had to have a jet to move you around because there was no social media, not that I'm necessarily for it. There was no emails at the time that was going on or other things. You broke a mold. You don't have to do everything that everybody else is doing as long as you have morality, kindness, and wanting to help other people, because when you help other people, they will help you.
So you're sort of dating me now, talking about my age a little bit?
Well, actually, I would like to date you because your audience, you are a very good-looking man who stays young-looking, and that is the area that you're working very hard in through your aloe line, which is superior, and your other personalized regenerative medicine, incorporating a whole well-thought-out holistic approach, and in the area of stem cells as well, which is an area where my passion is too. Because if we can give people back their physical health, then maybe they'll get closer to their mental health and spiritual health and environmental health, because if the four of them don't come together, we are not going to have it all together.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned stem cells, and tell us a little bit about the work you're doing in that field.
Well, research, marketing, sales, but putting together teams of the right people to make sure it's the right thing, because in our society today, Randy, we have some ICSs, interest-creating statements, trigger words. One of them is blockchain, cryptocurrency. Another is hemp, CBD, and the other big one that gets people's ear is stem cells. And they can be miraculous, but they can also be part of somebody's agenda. What is a stem cell? How many different types? Where do they originate from? Are people following the laws? Should you have it done here? Should you have it done offshore? Should it be medical tourism? And we are building a network with an IRB, a review board, the right doctors for the mid-range and long-term range, not just the short hit, which a lot of that is going on today. People making tons of money, but not really having the follow-through. Good patient management, watching the data, doing things the right way in order. And that takes a lot of research, studying, and putting together the right team to do that. And hopefully you and I will be part of that team into the future.
Well, you know, it's interesting when you get to know a lot of medical professionals and you really sort of observe the tunnel vision that they've been trained to see things in only their way, instead of a synergistic, holistic way. And then sometimes you meet these very special medical professionals that have broken away, from all the things they were taught. And they've sort of found, as you mentioned, the truth, that there's better ways out there. And in many cases, there are ways that kind of go back to the past, right?
Right.
Talk to us about that.
Well, that's a great subject. I have a background in dentistry. I used to lecture to the major universities, attended the ADA meetings, CDA. I was an acting vice president, regional manager of a dental laser company. And what I thought I knew of dentistry then versus dentistry now, and I don't want to hurt anybody out there's feeling who's a dentist, but traditional dentistry, from my opinion, and I'd love to prove it to you, I'm always great when there's an objection, but traditional dentistry, a dentist gets a license to practice, to be administratively legal, but all the great dentists I know became what they are as scientists and researchers after dental school in study groups, because an awful lot of dentistry today is drilling, filling, billing, and eventually killing. For example, the mouth is not isolated only to a mouth. It isn't just the submarine, it's part of the holistic field. Every tooth is connected via meridians like acupressure or acupuncture. And forgive them, for they do not know any better. Doctors going into medical schools, modern day allopathic medicine, not medical schools of yesteryear, they're screened to how well they will conform to the protocol of what is. And ladies and gentlemen out there, there are lots of answers. There are lots of solutions. There are lots of cures, in quotes, but they're hidden in certain areas because how long people live and to what level they live and how well they can be controlled dictates so many other policies in economics, and we're trying to appropriately free those things so people can be empowered. So we are no longer the number one farmed commodity on this planet, human beings.
Well, David, this hour has gone by really fast, and we could probably keep this up for a couple more hours, but we're just about out of time. But let me ask you this question. What would you ask yourself if you were me and I was you? What would you ask?
What would I ask myself
if we reversed our roles? What question would you ask of you if you were me?
Same question I guess I always ask. I'm asking you a question, right?
Well, no,
I
you're
want
to ask
you,
yourself. I'll ask you.
Mine is always, how can I best serve and support you?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And how would you answer that to most people when they ask you that?
Most people don't ask me, how can I best serve and support you?
I'm sure.
But so
well, let's do it this way.
Sure.
What's one of the most interesting answers you've had?
Just be there, hold space for me, listen. Just knowing that you care and that you tell me that you are available. You don't have to ask permission to call me, text me, or email me. Call me. My phone's on. I'll do what I can do. Because at the end of the day, I think when we talk about longevity and what the purpose is, if I have to see my life flash before me, it's who did I care for? How did they care for me? When somebody reached out when I was there. And just today I took a call from somebody who was kind of difficult, and I said, I've got to take the call. It's important. It's a very intelligent and successful person in the field of finance. But you never know when that spark of hope or kind energy is going to come back around. And I am a little selfish. We all are. We all have our own needs. But it's still a bigger picture. We all play a part of the cog in the system. So,
it's really about relationships, isn't it?
It is all about building relationships, because trust is a very important thing.
Absolutely. David, thanks so much for your words of wisdom, and just really great having you on here. We'll look forward to doing this again, and we can dive in a little bit deeper.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time, same station. Bye-bye, everybody.